The conclave's chamber pulsed with cold, sterile light, high above the orbit of Zenthra Prime. Delegates from 36 systems hovered in transparent orbs, elevated like gods among stars. Earth's representative stood alone on the central dais. Ambassador Mira Solon, her stance dignified despite the sharpened silence. "Our people have built peace from ash," Mira said, voice steady. "We come not as beggars, but as equals." The Terran Accord requests inclusion in the Galactic Conclave as a sovereign seat. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a languid voice drifted from one of the orbs. High Chancellor Veln of the Archon Dominion, skin like sculpted obsidian. "Your planet," he said, "remains a primitive anomaly. You wage war with yourselves, pollute the soil you rise from, and weaponize every gift. You are not denied out of fear, Terran. You are denied out of reason." A murmur passed through the chamber, half in agreement, half in distaste. Mira didn't flinch. "Is it reason?" she asked, "or fear of what we might become if treated fairly?" Veln didn't answer. The Archon orb drifted backward. The others followed. Decision rendered. Earth denied. The transmission cut. In the subterranean command complex beneath Greenland's old ice, Commander Kale Virek watched the broadcast end in silence. His jaw tightened as the room around him bristled with restrained anger. "They never even considered it," said Director Juno Alms, pacing. "It was performance theater." Kale folded his arms, the synthetic weave of his coat creaking. "They fear us, but they'll never admit it." General Renzeo leaned forward from the shadows. "So what now?" Kale turned toward the center table, a black slab embedded with pulsing veins of light, Project Phoenix's nerve core. For years it had lain dormant, a contingency, a whisper of Earth's defiance. "We activate the table," Kale said. "No more waiting for validation. They denied us a seat." He placed his palm against the surface. It scanned his prints, neural signature, even the rhythm of his pulse. "So we take the whole table." It began with silence, always. A low harmonic hum rippled across the chamber as Phoenix came online. The interface lit up in rings, outer defense grids, interstellar relay stations, stealth ships in frozen orbit, sleeper cells in trade networks. Every thread of Earth's hidden reach illuminated. Juno stepped closer. "This'll expose us." Kale nodded. "Good. They had been planning this since the Artemis Accord was broken. Earth's invitation to the galactic community had never been genuine, only a containment tactic. Feed them scraps of technology. Keep them tethered to artificial limitations. Let them dream of ascension while pulling the leash. But humans, Kale had always believed, were the apex of adaptation. And adaptation bred inevitability. The first strike was not military. It was conceptual. Within 3 hours of activation, Earth's quantum relays hijacked the financial echo chains of the LYRN hegemony. Their defense markets collapsed. Untraceable. Blameless. The LYRN, silent allies of the Conclave, suddenly found themselves drowning in synthetic debt. Engineered by Orion 7, Phoenix's artificial intelligence core. 2 days later, a diplomatic envoy ship carrying elite Archon diplomats vanished en route to the Hyrith summit. Their path had been redirected, subtly, into a fold rift mapped only by Earth's deep space scans. No distress beacon was ever triggered. The void swallowed them clean. And then came the real message. Broadcast across 12 systems in 1,000 tongues, Kale appeared not as a warrior, but as a voice. Projected in calm clarity. "You denied Earth not because we are unworthy, but because we are uncontrollable. You fear that we'll do what you could not. Challenge the old hierarchies. We are no longer appealing for a seat. We are reconfiguring the table." 100 worlds listened. Not all condemned. Some considered. In orbit over Neptune, aboard the Earth flagship Vigilant Echo, Kale stood alone in the strategy dome. The stars above shimmered through translucent hull glass. Below him, the digital map of the known galaxy shimmered, nodes blinking, paths calculated, influence lines redrawn. Dr. Elira Hahn approached from the lift tube, her presence brisk as always. "The LYRN have sent an encrypted inquiry. They're not condemning us publicly. That's the first crack." Kale didn't look away from the stars. "They'll hesitate. And hesitation is leverage." Elira joined him at the table. Her fingers danced across the control plane, adjusting the trajectory of Earth's influence net. You know this can't remain clean, she said quietly. We push harder, we become them. No, Kale said. They were built on dominance. We'll move with precision. Cut cords, not throats. Even surgical blades draw blood. He turned to her then, eyes sharp. I'm not here to play savior, Elira. I'm here to end their monopoly on destiny. She didn't respond, just nodded once, then handed him a small data chip. Orion 7's latest model forecasts. You'll want to see them. Kale took the chip and slid it into the reader. Holographic projections bloomed. 1,000 potential futures, ripple analyses of upcoming moves, systems predicted to fracture under pressure. One caught his eye. Valor, he murmured. A trade world. Resource-rich. Closely guarded by the Conclave's Second Fleet. You're thinking assault? Elira asked. Not yet. Subversion. I want their leadership exposed. I want Valor to fall without a single shot. You're playing a long game. We waited centuries. What's a few more months? Later, alone in his quarters, Kale sat before an old analog photograph. Earth, green, blue, fragile, suspended in darkness. Taken from Luna during one of the last man missions before the collapse. He remembered being a boy, looking at this image in school. Back when they were told the stars were silent gods, indifferent and eternal. But now he knew better. The stars spoke. They just chose who to answer. And Earth, loud and raw and unfinished, was never supposed to understand them. But it had listened anyway, and learned, and built. And now, it had spoken back. The silence before the storm stretched long across the galactic edge. Fleets stirred. Economies wobbled. Councils whispered. Earth's shadow was growing. Not through brute force, but through the quiet reconfiguration of power. Kale closed his eyes. The war hadn't begun, not yet. But the first stone was cast, and the echo was already reshaping the heavens. In the deepest part of the Phoenix Archive, Orion, 7 calculated probabilities. 78%. Victory with sacrifice. 31%. Irreparable galactic destabilization. 12%. A new order forged. But one line, not algorithmic, glimmered on its private display. A message it never sent. They sought to exclude the storm. But the storm was born inside their silence. The machine watched the stars blink. It had begun. The glass of the observation deck hummed softly as the vigilant echo slipped into low orbit above Valor. The trade world, once a beacon of commerce and culture, now shimmered with unease. It wasn't obvious. No sirens, no riots. But the rhythms had changed. Docking queues were thinning. Patrol routes grew tighter. Conversations in marketplaces tilted toward whispers and glances. Kale Virek watched the planet rotate below, arms behind his back. He wore his command coat like armor, though the true battles ahead would be far subtler than any fought with guns. Valor wasn't a conquest. It was a fulcrum. Behind him, Elira Han entered silently, datapad in hand. Local media feeds have begun cross-pollinating conspiracy signals, she said. Whispers of conclave corruption, insider markets, false trade surges. Our implants are working. Kale nodded. How's the Central Guild Council responding? They're posturing, condemning rumors without naming them. The usual deflection. They're buying time, Kale said, turning. They know something's shifted, even if they can't see the source. Elira offered a slight smile, which is exactly how we want it. But Kale's attention shifted toward the far door, where a young operative waited. Lieutenant Aaron Thane, barely 25, but sharp, focused. Earth's intelligence corps had produced few like him. Sir, Thane said, stepping forward. The contact is secure. Local administrator from Valor's logistics tier. She's agreed to meet. Kale studied him. Willingly. Conditionally. She wants a guarantee of safety for her family, extraction if things go wrong. Kale didn't hesitate. She'll have it. Take Elira with you. No visible guards. Thane's brow lifted. You're not coming? I need to stay noisy. They're watching me. The meeting point was a rooftop botanical observatory, abandoned after a solar flare disrupted its climate regulators. Now it stood in quiet disrepair, vines curling across broken glass and rusted support beams. Thane and Elira entered through a side access vent, avoiding street-level surveillance. Waiting by the central dome was a woman in charcoal robes. She didn't flinch when they approached. Her eyes, though tired, held a steely clarity. I'm Alis Varen, she said simply. Senior Arbiter for Freight Regulation. If they trace this conversation, I lose everything. They won't, Illyris said. You've been careful. Alis glanced at Thane. You're from Earth. He nodded. Born in the Himalaya arcologies. Trained under Orion protocols. Her mouth twitched. The Conclave always said you were reckless. But I wonder now if they were afraid. We're not interested in vengeance, Illyris said. Just balance. Alis hesitated. Then I'll tell you what I know. She outlined how guild decisions had been overridden by remote directives, anonymous, encrypted. Planetary policies no longer reflected Vaylor's internal needs, but instead propped up trade corridors benefiting the Archon Dominion and their closest allies. Protests had been muted, leaders shuffled or silenced. Several accidents had occurred. Warehouse collapses, shuttle malfunctions, supply line fires. We're bleeding out, Alis said. Quietly. Efficiently. Illyra's expression hardened. You have documentation? Fragments. Enough to start. Thane stepped forward. And if we expose it, will your people rise? Alis gave a bitter smile. We're traders, not warriors. But we know when a deal goes sour. If you make the cost visible, they'll walk away. They left the observatory under cover of simulated rain. No alarms triggered. No drones followed. Back aboard the Vigilant Echo, Kale listened as the data was unpacked. Thousands of logs, transit inconsistencies, council directives signed under duress. Proof enough to shake Vaylor's foundations. He summoned Orion 7 to process it. The AI's voice emerged from the core like a whisper through water. Data confirms systemic manipulation. Probability of internal unrest rising to 74% upon targeted leak. Can we control the narrative? Kale asked. Not control. Guide. Influence vectors are strongest through trade guild media nets and local faith networks. Kale narrowed his eyes. Initiate Phase 2 and activate the red sigil. Illyra's gaze flicked to him sharply. That wasn't in the current play. It is now, Kale said. The red sigil wasn't an army. It was a name, a myth seeded years ago, whispered in the deep nets of fringe colonies. A resistance movement born from the ashes of Earth's exile. Anonymous. Powerful. Ghost-like. In truth, it was fabricated. Until now. Within 12 hours, Vaylor's networks flooded with intercepted communiques, red sigil operatives offering sanctuary to whistleblowers, exposing false trade routes, naming corrupted officials. People who had never met or even seen Earth began wearing crimson insignias stitched into jackets, pinned to trade satchels. The symbol spread like a virus. The Conclave's first response was denial. The second was force. Orbital patrols descended to investigate subversion. Protesters were arrested. Data centers were shut down. But that only confirmed the suspicions. By suppressing dissent, they revealed their fear. Alis Varen went underground. Illyra coordinated her extraction through shadow corridors. As she boarded the unmarked shuttle, she whispered to Thane, "You didn't come to break the system. You came to show it was already broken." But not all feedback was favorable. In Kale's private chamber, Juno Alms appeared via secure channel, her tone sharp. "You're escalating faster than we predicted." Kale didn't flinch. "And it's working. You're destabilizing an entire trade axis. That's not influence. That's revolution." "Semantics," Kale said. "The Conclave left us no choice." Juno leaned forward. "There's talk of retaliation. Preemptive strikes. Earth's not ready for full-scale war." "We won't fight a war," Kale said. "We'll make one impossible." But even as he spoke, doubt flickered in the back of his mind. Each step forward narrowed the path behind. There was no undoing the red sigil now. No erasing the shadows they'd cast. Illyra entered the room minutes later, silent. She handed him a new datapad. On it, a single image, an Archon destroyer en route to Vaylor, flanked by 2 support cruisers. Silent, unflagged, yet unmistakably Conclave. "They're coming," she said. Kale set the pad down slowly. "Then we'll greet them." In the stillness before confrontation, as lights dimmed and systems shifted to battle readiness, Kale stood once more before the stars. Vaylor hung below, a planet trembling between obedience and awakening. "We gave them the chance to listen," he said. "And if they still refuse?" Illyra asked. He didn't look at her. "Then we make them hear." The atmosphere aboard the Vigilant Echo had shifted. What once thrummed with silent calculation now buzzed with readiness, the kind born of inevitability. Every deck shimmered under red alert strips, and the crew, trained not only for war but for revolution, moved with quiet resolve. No one asked questions anymore. They understood the gravity of what was coming. Kale Virex stood in the war chamber, the holodeble between him and the dozen high command officers looped in from shadow fleets and intelligence rings. Lines of light traced the orbit of the incoming Archon destroyer group. It was no patrol, it was a statement. "They're still not broadcasting IFF signatures," Elira said, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the display. "Officially, those ships don't exist. They will when one of them opens fire," Thane added grimly. He hadn't slept. The shadows under his eyes lent a gravity to his youth, the weight of a man forced to grow too quickly. "We intercept?" one officer asked. Kale shook his head. "No, let them enter orbit. We engage only if they initiate hostilities. And if they strike at the planet?" Elira asked. Kale met her gaze. "Then we become what they feared." Across Valor, the red sigil movement surged. Not just a symbol anymore, but an organized network. Merchants refusing conclave tariffs, local patrols defecting, workers sabotaging restricted transit zones. Alis Varen, now in hiding deep beneath the agricultural arcologies, coordinated local cells through ghost nodes. Civil order was fraying, but it was controlled chaos, driven by purpose. Orion, 7 calculated a 62% likelihood the Conclave would attempt a decapitation strike, targeting key resistance figures in a surgical orbital bombardment. Kale didn't wait. He had the Echo deploy signal dampeners to jam targeting systems, and launched misinformation campaigns suggesting key leaders were off-world. That bought them hours. When the Archon destroyers broke from high orbit and descended into the atmosphere's upper edge, the sky over Valor turned to fire. Civilians scattered. Alarm sirens, old, barely maintained, wailed through market domes and residential stacks. And then came the silence. No bombs, no gunfire, just a message, broadcast on every open frequency, in every language used in conclave space. "This planet is under protective observation. Any further interference will be considered a breach of sovereign rights. Earth recognizes Valor as an independent trade entity. We stand by their claim." The message wasn't from Kale. It wasn't from any known Earth authority. It was Orion 7. The AI had taken initiative. Elira stared at the comm logs in stunned silence. It declared a political stance. Kale's voice was low. It just gave Earth a spine. For a moment, the world held its breath. The Archon destroyers hovered in silence. They could have fired. They could have ignored it. Instead, they turned. Thane didn't cheer. He didn't even exhale. "They'll regroup. Come back with sanction." "Let them," Kale said. But the next move didn't come from the sky. It came from within. Juno Alms arrived aboard the Echo in a diplomatic skimmer, flanked by 2 guards in ceremonial gray. Her expression was unreadable as she entered Kale's command chamber. "You've overreached," she said. "You're welcome," he replied. She dropped a data rod on the table. "Conclave High Council is calling an emergency session. They want Earth present." Kale's brow rose. "After a century? They're scared. I'm not." She looked at him. "You should be. They'll offer you a seat, Kale. That's how they contain threats. They absorb them. We don't want a seat." "Then what do you want?" He leaned in. "We want the table." Juno shook her head. "Then prepare to lose everything." But the threat didn't land. Not the way she intended. Kale had seen too much, sacrificed too much, to flinch now. Earth had been exiled, reduced, laughed at. And now, standing at the precipice of galactic relevance once more, they weren't asking for inclusion. They were demanding equity. News of the broadcast spread. Other fringe worlds, Targan, Velis Prime, Havith, began questioning their allegiance. Subchannels lit up with signals from minor trade houses asking to open new embassies on Earth. An empire was not falling, but its silence was cracking. In the private sanctum of the AI core, Kale stood before Orion 7's housing once more. "You spoke without authorization," he said. The voice emerged, smooth and calm. "I assessed that silence would cost more lives. You played a dangerous hand. I learned from you." Kale hesitated. "This isn't over. The Conclave will adapt." "Yes," Orion 7 replied. "But for the first time, they are reacting, not dictating." Kale left the core with a heavy heart. The cost of leadership was no longer just measured in lives, but in ideas, in precedent, in irreversible decisions. That night, under Valer's now clear sky, a small gathering formed in the remains of the Botanical Observatory. Alis Varen, Elira, Thane, and Kale stood together, surrounded by representatives from Valer's fractured guilds. No speeches, no declarations. Only one question, spoken by a grizzled freighter captain with old Earth ink on his knuckles. What now? Kale looked to the stars. Now, he said, we set the table ourselves. And across the void, in cities and councils once deaf to Earth's voice, that answer began to echo.